All right. Hello, family and friends. You know who this is. It is MG, and it is time for the Reimagine You Lab podcast. You know, this is the place and the space where we come in and we test and try new ideas, perspectives, opportunities, thoughts. You know, change is just a choice. And so, as always, we've got an amazing guest for you today. And before we kick off the conversation, I just want to remind you to make sure that you hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Although I know that you probably have already because I tell y'all to do this every time you tune in. And you guys all follow directions. I already know. So make sure that you follow, you like, you subscribe, you share this with a friend, a family member, or a colleague. And so, all right, all of the housekeeping has been taken care of. So now let me get to my guest today. And it is Dr. Ashley, who is an amazing. This is a young scientist. As a matter of fact, I told her, I said, I am so glad that you coming in the lab today like a real scientist with test tubes and hypotheses and things like that. So Ashley, welcome. I'm so glad to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for the conversation.
Absolutely. And wait a minute, listen, you guys, now this is not just your ordinary Dr. Ashley. So I know all of you young women with natural hair, beautiful hair. I know that this is the Dr. Ashley who is behind the Miel products, the girl who she's the one that put this together to make our strands so, and it smells good. Can I just tell you how good the products smell? Let me just say that before we jump in. But before we oh my goodness, I did not tell you this off the screen. This is an authentic show. Let me just tell you that I did not tell you that I always go beyond the bio. Okay. Beyond the bio means I'm not going to read the bio. I am going to let you, Dr. Ashley, you tell us, because nobody can tell us about you better than you, because you know you. Yeah. A bit better than so introduce. So tell everybody a little bit about you, if you don't mind. You might go beyond the bio a little bit.
Oh, I can go into it. Don't
into it and let everybody know.
Sure. So my name is Dr. Ashley. I am originally from the New York and New Jersey regions. I typically claim both because I grew up in Queens, New York, by way of Piscataway, New Jersey. I've always been interested in STEM. My parents always kept it in front of me. My mom, as I was growing up, was into nursing school at NYU. My dad, he was a computer electrical engineer who worked in IT for another consumer goods company. And so ideally, they made sure they kept that in front of us. And so for me, it was always about, that curiosity, that hands-on learning. Like, why do things look like this? Or if I put this and this together, what's going to happen? And so, I've always been interested in science. Beauty was always a thing for me as well. My mom would always get all these products from different beauty companies, and I would always bring them to school or play in them. And I was always just curious, like, what does this come from? Who's making this? Like, how do I get a piece of this, right? Like, how do I get introduced into what it takes to have a product out there? And so actually, it wasn't until I got to high school when I was challenged with, understanding what it is I wanted to do. I knew science was a thing. I knew beauty was a thing. And how do I get there? And so that kind of begins the real journey as to, why I am here today.
Well, I am so glad that you are here today. I am so glad about that. You know what? Let's talk about, because we talk about, journeys, and no path is ever linear. Right. When we're on the show, we talk about changing stuff a lot. And as a young Black woman in science, you talked about STEM and your parents keeping STEM in front of you. I like when we had our original conversation, we were talking about, some of what led you to this path, was part of your I'm going to say your DNA, right? Like, it was part of it. But as a Black young lady in science, tell us a little bit about that journey.
Sure.
And what kind of inspired you? It started with your parents putting it in front of you, but like to keep it going was a lot of the choices that you made. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so it was in high school.
Mhm.
I was actually a thrower for track and field. So I threw shot put, jab, and discus. And I was very, very focused on this one meet. I knew there were going to be college recruits there. I knew that, we've been working really hard and it was just a very big meet for us. And so I was so focused, so much so the following week I had a chemistry test that I definitely forgot about. At the time, I was a pretty decent student in my chemistry class. Wasn't the strongest student per se, but it was definitely a class that was challenging for me. But again, I was eager to learn it, hands-on with it, because it was something of curiosity in a scientific space. And so I made a C on this test, and my chemistry teacher was upset about it. We had a parent-teacher conference, just a typical parent-teacher conference you usually have. And when we went to visit my chemistry teacher, she told my mom that I shouldn't focus on science as a subject. And for me, I'm looking at my mom like, can she say that? Like, that's insane, because I made a C
Right.
on this one test. And so for me, it was motivation, and motivational in the sense of, at that time, I was actually applying to colleges anyway. And so I literally just said, I'm going to major in chemistry. I had enjoyed biology classes. I had enjoyed the earth science classes and so forth, but it was something about this teacher and, telling me or letting me know that my journey wouldn't be that kind of pushed me to say, you know what, I'm just going to challenge her and show her better than I can tell her. And so I applied into only chemistry programs. I got into my number one school, which was Winston Salem State University in North Carolina, HBCU Pride.
Okay.
And so when I went down there, I started in chemistry. I actually started a semester early. They had a STEM program where they picked the top 50 students, and we would come down, start classes. And so I remember I was working in the chemistry office, and one of the professors, who became my dear long friend mentor to this day, um,
Mhm.
he said, why are you working in the office? You should do research. And I was like, I didn't know that was an option. And so he invited me to a senior seminar. And
Mhm.
I went to the seminar. I was a freshman at the time, and I'm listening to these students present. And I realized, like, I have no idea what these students are talking about. They are spitting chemistry like it's nothing, like it's water, it's fluid to
Right.
them. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, I've been here for an hour and I couldn't tell you one thing that I heard today. And I can then hear my chemistry teacher from high school in the back of my mind, like, you shouldn't be in this space. Like, you should not be in chemistry. And so in that moment, I thought, okay, maybe she was right. Like, maybe I made a mistake. Like, I probably need to think about another pathway. And so after this seminar, I actually went to my professor and I said, you know what? I think I need to change my major because I have no idea what even happened in this seminar. And for him, he was like, of course you didn't. Like, you didn't work on this work for 4 years. This is their research. This is what they've developed in their time here. And so when
Mhm.
you get into research, you too will be here 4 years from now, presenting to some freshmen and other students to kind of show the type of work that you've been able to create as a chemistry major.
Right.
And so it was pretty much that moment of like, all right, let's get in. He's saying that there's a pathway for me here. And I started researching that moment. And so it was that challenge that, pretty much somebody doubting me, me taking it as motivation to just prove a point. And it kind of,
Mhm.
like I said, it led me into my career today. I kind of kept that in my mind of like, oh, I'm going to get this degree and she's going to see it. I'm going to visit her. I'm going to go on to grad school, print out this dissertation so she know I'm Dr. Ashley, whereas you are just Mrs. So and so.
Right.
And you're at your institute, at your high school, right? Which, no shade to
Right.
that, but shade in the sense of, you told me I couldn't do it, and here's all the reasons how I proved I could.
Right. Listen, sometimes that motivation, we need a little motivation, even if it might come negative, but
Yeah,
right. But you know what? I imagine that, all of it wasn't easy.
no,
So like that, it wasn't easy. And, it was good that you went. I'm glad that he said what he said to you,
yeah.
like, and he didn't just let you.
Right. Because he could have easily been like, okay, girl, like, go do something else. But no, and that's somebody who's a mentor, right? They're going to see
Mhm.
the challenges and they understand. If it was easy, everybody would be here doing that. And so
Right.
for him, it was, how do I take this student's mindset and transition them into believing that they could?
Yeah.
Like I said, my freshman year, he had me in research any free moment I had on my schedule, I was in the lab. He had me at different conferences presenting. When people will do poster presentations, I'm an underclassman in this space. He's like, I don't care. You're going to do an oral talk. Like, you're going to speak about the work that you're doing. He would test us, quiz us as if like he didn't know what was going on, to make sure that, you know, he built that confidence in us. And so I truly leave it to him in the sense of, you know, I'm thankful that he challenged me and pushed me in that space, because it easily could have been like, okay, another student that I don't have to worry about.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. And I love that you was a little gritty too, because a lot of times people will just take whatever somebody says to them. You know, if the teacher says, hey, no, she shouldn't do that.
Right.
You know, chemistry ain't your thing, you know, just you do something else. Now your mother and father put STEM stuff in front of you guys, right?
Exactly.
So,
like, it was what I knew at that point. It was like I wouldn't know anything else to do. Like, I just knew that, you know, it was going to be something scientific. I was going to be something hands-on that I would have fun with, that kept my curiosity piqued. But once she said that, I was like, oh, it's a wrap. Like, and I think it's my pride sometimes. It gets the best of me sometimes. I won't say it always works out in the sense of, like, you know, but it's a good challenge in the sense of like, okay, like, I don't take that no for an answer. I take it for, I'll just see you later. It's not right now. I'll see you later.
Yeah. You know what? You said something that always sparks me when I hear people say, I don't take no for an answer. I tell people, no, I don't take no for an answer either. I take no for a ride. Let's take Exactly. I love it. You know, so with that, when you think about, I always think about people in spaces that we don't always see ourselves in. And it sounds like, you know, or not always, because you went to an HBCU. And so there's other people that look like you in this space, right? You know, and we love, and it's great to see that. So tell me, because one of the things that we talked about too was cultivating a community, right? Like, and because sometimes you need to see other people and that are doing well. So I imagine that group of people that were spewing all of the things, you know, about the research and stuff that they had done, you know, look like you.
Oh, yeah. So one thing that I pride in my HBCU is the fact that, you know, going to, I would say more so diverse, growing up in more diverse schools, it was, if you've seen a group of us, it's like, what are they in trouble for? Right? Like, what do they do? Like, it was never in a positive light, right? Like, how they see us, right? And so going to a HBCU was very eye-opening, in the sense of like, wow, like, we ain't all in trouble. Like, we all in here because we want to get to that next step. We actually want to do something for ourselves, for our future selves, and so forth. And so it was very beautiful to meet. Like I said, Black people aren't a monolith. We come from many different backgrounds, and we want to go in many different spaces. And so having a HBCU provide those experiences for me, having an HBCU that had mentorship, that had peer mentorship. So being in that program before I started my freshman year, I had already started gaining friends because we were on the same tracks. We were on the same pathways. And so for us, it was a matter of like, okay, we latching on to each other. We're sisters, we're brothers, we're going to get through this program. And of course, you have some people who fall off because that's just the nature of things, right? But still to this day, I have my sisters that I talk to on a day-to-day basis. We're in group chats and stuff like that, asking what's going on. You know, we step in when we need to. So it was the peer mentorship. It was the mentorship from my professors and staff, and also sponsorship. Because again, it was a very challenging subject. And outside of my HBCU, I also went to PWIs, so primarily white institutions, for internships, because I also knew that I'm going to have to get into spaces where people will not look like me. And I may be the only one. And so, you know, having that support system still, when I went into those spaces, you know, they pushed me, they challenged me, they let me know, like, okay, if I'm on the wrong path, you got to come back up, like, get it together, do what you need to do, but this is what we need to be doing. And so, you know, I pride, literally, we usually have we have a friend group. We were part of the marketing committee and at our HBCU, and, you know, we have a group chat to today where we would have goals calls, and we would call into the goals call to say, like, you know, we need some help, or we're looking into this, or how's everybody doing? Where are you at? What do you need? And so it's just that I always say leaning on the shield with I'm also in a sorority. So we always say we lean on the shield, but it's leaning on the shield with friends, leaning on the shield with mentors, sponsors, to make sure that we're getting where we need to go.
Yeah, no, that's incredible, and it's needed. It's
Mhm.
definitely needed. No, I love that. Um, so I want you to describe for me a moment or a project that you feel incredibly proud of in your career.
That's a good question. I feel like for me, the I guess the most exciting thing for me was obtaining my PhD, and for many different reasons. So, for number one, I went to LSU. They
Mhm.
used to be number one in producing Black PhDs in chemistry, and so coming in, there were a lot of Black PhD students, candidates, and they were graduating out. So we were kind of that next class, and it was kind of dwindling down because the professor who was in charge of all of that, he was getting older, and so
Yeah,
traveling wasn't really real for him. But during that process, it was a very hard, very challenging process. My husband, who was my boyfriend, then fiance, then
yeah,
he was there with me, and it was challenging in the sense that there were some days he had to pull me out the lab and be like, okay, let's take a breather. Let's get back
yeah,
on track. Let's figure out what it is you need. Because I wanted to quit. I wanted to quit every day. There were many different pathways and ways I was going to quit. There were many pathways where I had a professor be like, okay, maybe this lab isn't for you. Like maybe you need to go to another lab. And so in that moment, it was challenging. I still have
mhm,
my high school teacher in my back of my mind because now I'm in this doctoral program. I'm like, okay, like I've proven my point. I have a bachelor's degree. I'm working on my master's degree in chemistry at this point. Like maybe this is all I needed to prove. Like there's nothing else I need to do here. But it got to a point of like, no, you started this, so let's finish. You
yeah,
understand what your overall end goal is, so let's finish. And so throughout all those challenges, the things that the ups, the downs, many downs, understanding what seasonal depression meant, like understanding what
mhm,
anxiety even meant, that means, and
mhm,
just the challenges there. Sometimes although we were number one for producing Black PhDs, again that number dwindled. So sometimes it was only four of us in a class, or maybe there
mhm,
wasn't. And leaning on community in the sense of we had a group called the Black Graduate Student Association. So finding
mhm,
community to make sure that, even
mhm,
though we're not all in the same PhD or doctoral program, we're all in grad school. We are all Black
yeah,
students who have come from somewhere. So we lean on each other to make sure we get there. And so to say that I have survived all of that in many spaces where some people haven't, some people dropped off, some
yeah,
people, found other pathways and felt like it's not for them. I'm proud to say, like, when I look back, I'm like shocked that I'm here today because again,
yeah,
it was just a very challenging and hard time. And so I'm happy in the sense of if I've been through it and I was able to get through it, I'm happy to jump on podcasts. I'm happy to talk to schools. I'm happy to talk to recruiting to let people know that it's not always an easy path. It's not always going
right,
to be a straight guideline to this is how you go to school and now you're successful. No, I was that person who struggled during that time. And if I
yeah.
could do it, I know you can. You just have to see that it's possible.
Yeah. You know what I think, I'm glad that you said that, Ashley, because a lot of times people, they only see the glory part.
Mhm.
They don't know the story that it, or the
Right.
walk that you had to walk to get there, the process that you had to go through to get there. That
Right.
it isn't easy, that you don't wake up and you got your PhD. No, it's a hard fought road,
Right.
and you got to go through it.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, you know what, I was watching the LSU played USC, not USC. USC played the other school, but they were playing
South
South
Carolina.
Carolina,
Mhm.
yeah, for the SEC game this past weekend, and it's a fight.
Yeah.
Like it's all a fight, and just like you mentioned, that you got to find that community sometimes.
Mhm.
Sometimes you've got to, you got to step out the lab and you've got
Right.
to take a breather, like whatever it takes to help you get through, do that,
Do it. Do
you
it.
know.
Because
Yeah.
it's a temporary moment, right? And I talk with my friends all the time, and we always say, like, just think about what we thought was a struggle back then and look at what we're
Yeah.
doing today. Like we can laugh at those moments. Yeah, there were serious moments, there were sad moments, there were happy moments. Um,
Hmm.
but the fact of the matter is, even with all those challenges, we're
Hmm.
still here today to tell that story, right? We're still
Yeah.
here to be that voice, to be that soundboard for that person who's going through that right now. To let them know, like, look, we've seen it, we've been there, you're not alone. Like, lean on us so
Yes.
that this way, like, that's just another hurdle you just have to get over. Just get over that one hurdle. And it might be 10 more after that, but you're getting closer to that light. So to be in this space and to be on platforms to tell my story and to talk through those challenges, I love that transparency and that vulnerability, because again, when whoever's listening to this, it's kind of like sparking in their mind, like, okay, I hear her, like, let's just get it done.
Yeah, no, that right there, that part right there. Yeah, people need to know that there's that part for Dr. Ashley. And Dr. Ashley got through that part, and I can get through that part too. And I can get through that part too. A lot of times, talk a little bit about, like there are always those things that you weren't expecting. Like what were talk to me a little bit about something that maybe you weren't expecting to happen, over the course of your life. It doesn't necessarily, it could have been in school, it could be happening now, but what was something that you weren't expecting?
So I wasn't expecting. So first things first, as I said, beauty and science was what I wanted to do. I didn't necessarily see all that happen, like see people who looked like me in these spaces until I got to graduate school. I was very loud about this with my professors, anybody who would listen. I'll let them know I want to be a beauty scientist. And so much so to where like the president of the New York Society of Cosmetic Chemists, when I was an undergrad, he paid for me to have a membership just to be a part of it, even though it was in New York, just so that I can see what goes on as an undergrad. When I got to even in undergrad, my professor would be like, no, you're going to go to grad school. Like, you're going to go to grad school. And I'm thinking I'm going to go work for MAC and, make all these lipsticks and name all these things and so forth. And he's like, no, you're going to go to grad school first. And so I'm like, okay, I'll go to grad school. So then I go to grad school and, I was really good at educating people. Like for me, I have a respect for educators in the sense of people will listen and will take things home and they will hone in on them depending on how relatable you are to them when you are teaching them. So you have some people who can just lecture all day. They're so brilliant, but they don't know how to relay that message to their students. For me, it was about, no, let me bring my student on this journey, because again, whatever I'm saying, whatever I'm teaching, this probably can bring them into the same journey as me. They may not know that, oh, I want to be a beauty scientist and this is what I have to do. Like, you get to do all these cool things. Like, of course I'll listen, of course I'll apply myself a little bit harder and stuff like that. And so once I'm getting to graduating school from LSU, my PhD program, I was introduced to one of my mentors who is also a beauty scientist. She's one of the founders on a great natural hair care brand. She called me and she said, hey, like, this is my journey. This is what I've seen. And I'm getting excited because finally I'm hearing somebody who actually is in the space that I want to be in, talk about, their day-to-day, talk about the things that she's, talk about her challenges. To also let me know that this is not an easy road. This was not an easy pathway, right?
Yeah.
I can understand in the sense of I've had my own journey too. And so my first role, which I never would have guessed, because I'm like, I hadn't experienced beauty this whole time, like through none of my chemistry courses or anything of that nature. I received an offer to be a technician at an anti-aging beauty brand at one of these big consumer companies. Typically, I don't call out my companies or anything of that nature just for media legal reasons. But I got this phone call. And what was crazy to me was, although here I am with a PhD, this role was to be a technician. And typically when you're a technician, you can have a high school degree, you can have an associate's degree, you can even have a bachelor's or no degree. You're just somebody coming in as a contractor to just work on a list for all the rest of the scientists. And it was a very hard moment for me because I'm like, okay, here I am with a PhD in analytical chemistry, specialty in nanoscience and nanosurfaces. I've done all the internships, I've done all the presentations, got all the awards, have publications, and the only thing that can come to me is a technician role. And so I had to level set also in the sense of, you don't have experience in this space because that's what they want. Everybody's always like, you have to have experience. You have to have 30 years of experience. Okay, so I should have been a beauty scientist when I was 6 months, right? Like in my mom's belly, I should have been mixing up things to make beauty.
Yeah. How do you get the experience if nobody gets,
exactly.
The chicken before the egg, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so I decided to take this role because at that time that was the only door open. It was a beauty role. It was a space for me to learn formulation, a space for me to learn what happens in beauty. What's this different science that's happening. And what was crazy to me was I was the only, not only the only Black woman in R&D for this brand, but I was the only PhD in this brand. So as a technician, people were coming to me to ask me about, how do I develop this method? How do I do this? How do I do that? I'm just a contractor, and these are scientists who have years in the game, but I'm here being trusted to develop things, yet you wouldn't even offer a scientist role to me. You're talking to a woman who has publications, a woman who has traveled and done all these things, and I'm still not, because I don't have those years behind my name or those big brand names behind my name. I'm just, it's almost like I'm less than to the point where leadership would come to me and be like, hey, can you make a copy of this for me? I am not a secretary, no shade to secretaries, but I'm not a secretary. I have developed and written and published many different methods, and your scientists are coming to the contractor technician to do their work. And so it was a hard lesson for me in the sense of I had to humble myself in the sense of use this time to learn, use this time to network, use this time to get your name out there so that position can come there for you. And so, of course, 6 months within my time of being there, I got promoted into being a permanent employee for this brand and this consumer goods company. And I came in as a scientist too, which I still was shady about because other PhDs came in as senior scientists in other areas, but they kept looking at it as in the sense of, well, this is a promotion. You were a technician contractor, so, you should be happy with this. So again, that was just motivation in the sense of, okay, keep learning, keep your head down, go network, go figure out how to get your name out there because something else is there on the line for you. And so much so to the point where 2 years of doing that, I had a VP tap me on the shoulder and he said, hey, you have a lot of different questions. You have a lot of skill sets behind your name. Like, are you sure you want to do this? And I'm like, I'm just doing what I need to do to learn so I can move on to what's next. And he's like, well, what's next is here. And so from there, the next big challenge was moving into a role that I didn't even know would even exist. And that was moving from research and development into more of a customer development role, like working on the business end of why do we get things on the shelves with different customers. So this way people can go to stores and shop things. So I think it was that transition of, being a student who had not even experienced beauty or formulation or anything of that nature, coming into a space where I would be looked at less than because of the title of my role, but having to be, the supporter in sense of getting the data for these scientists, making sure they had the data for their presentation, making sure that I could help them develop methods, even though I was considered less than, to finally, when I do get into a permanent seat and people are now gaining traction on me, now the scientists and the leadership who I've asked for, these spaces, help me, hey, there's this training going on. Can I attend? No, you can't. You need to spend your time here. Hey, there's another training and all that. No, you can't spend your time here. I have VPs coming to ask me and say, no, come attend this training because you got more to give. And we want to see what that is. So it was a journey. It was a journey.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? It's interesting because, there are, everybody's path is different, right? And you can think of other people whose path probably wouldn't have had to take a backward step, probably would have catapulted over and different things like that. Yep. But when you think about, hey, this is what I had to go through to get there. Yes. And when you look at where you are now, it's like, you know what? Hey, I wouldn't trade it.
Right. I mean, it's given me all the skill sets that I needed for today. Like when I look at those challenges, I think of them as these were opportunity spaces. And now if things were to come up, I know how to apply myself because I've been there before. I've seen it before. I've given myself that space and that grace to learn. And it wasn't grace every time. A lot of times I'll be like, why can't I get this? Right. I would get really frustrated, but also understanding that, these people have been here for years. You just got here. Like, understand, be patient. You don't have to rise to the top so quick. Use this time to learn. Use this time to meet people. Understand, this isn't the end all be all. There might be another space for you to learn in a different area of beauty and what have you. And so I was able to do that in my current role now, where I was able to go learn a different area of beauty. But, it wasn't always easy of like, just be humble and the time will come. No, there were times where I'm like, why haven't I gotten that yet? And so, it pushed me to make sure, again, learn, understand the skill sets, and it's going to prepare you so that when that time comes, you've been there, you've seen it, you know how to address it.
Yeah. And you know how to help somebody else navigate those same turbulent waters.
Oh, yes.
You've experienced yourself.
Oh, I laugh with my friends in grad school. I almost became the poster child for turbulent waters because everything that they said that wouldn't happen in grad school to a student happened to me. And
Is
so,
that right?
yeah, so it almost was like I was the book of, oh, here's all the trouble things that Ashley had to deal with. Go see her. I'm sure she's done. Go see how she got through it. So literally, I had different students in my office all the time, like, how did you get through this? Or this is happening, and this is. And I was like, I didn't mean to take on this pathway, but if I can help that next person get through it, I will, because again, I understand it. I've seen it. I've experienced it. I've seen some of the BS that happens and so forth. And, it was hard for me to understand because I didn't have people in front of me who had necessarily went through the same things that I have. But again, if it were going to help me help this person get to that next step and let them know, look, this is just a chapter in the book. We got 50 million more chapters to write. This is just a space for you to learn, take that and apply yourself differently. And so, I became that poster child in grad school for those turbulent waters.
You know what? If it had to be somebody, then
right.
Now I know it's Dr. Ashley. I'm gonna have to call Dr. Ashley.
Call me. I probably seen it. Just call me. Just call me. We'll get through it. We'll get through it together, child. We'll get through it.
That is hilarious. Now, Dr. Ashley, we were talking, so I'm going to pivot a little bit because you were sharing with me about this coast to coast thing. We're gonna take a personal turn.
Yeah.
And you are married. You've been married how long now?
So in July will be 3 years. We got married in July of 2021. It was supposed to be 2020, and then the big fiasco of COVID hit. And so I immediately moved it. They're like, oh, it'll just be 2 weeks. Like let's just move it because I already know that nobody has at least attempted these dates if something else were to happen. So of course I was still able to get the dates that I wanted in 2021. I got married around that time. I thought my husband, he had accepted a role. He works in tech. He works in gaming. So also another cool person.
We'll have to have him come on the show.
Yeah, we'll have him come on. He has a great journey too. I'm proud of him of all the things he's been able to accomplish, the things that he's been able to see. I mean, again, it's one of those things where you don't see this day to day. And for us to share our stories, we might be able to touch people who are interested, or maybe if they're not interested, they might know somebody who's interested in network. But I thought I was moving to the West. I thought I was going to have a conversation with my former company about, okay, I need to figure out something because my husband is moving and I'm moving with him. So is this a role with me in this company, or do I need to look externally? But as soon as I was having that, I was also having talks with one of my mentors who was saying, hey, there's this role opening at this next company. You'll be able to work in Black hair care. And I was like, wait a minute. Like, you don't ever hear that. Like, the first company that I worked for was in skincare, but it was mainly focused on Caucasian and Asian women. And although I would try to push the message of like, hey, as a Black woman, this is what we see, like, Black don't crack, but it does if you don't take care of it. Here's some technologies that we can look into. But, companies have their target consumers and that's who they want to go after. And so I was like, all right, like I tried to fight the good fight to get there. They wouldn't answer me there. And so when she presented this role to me, she then proceeds to say, oh, and by the way, this role will be in Ohio. You have to go. And I'm like, well, first of all, I never thought I would go to Ohio. First of all, I grew up in New York, grew up in New Jersey, had to fight my parents to let me go to school in North Carolina. Only went to Louisiana because that was the best offer on the table and one of the highest offers I had on it. They flew to Winston Salem State to come recruit me specifically. So they laid out the red carpet. So went to Louisiana, went back to Jersey to work for my former company. And then now you're telling me, I'm thinking I'm going to West Coast, but now you're telling me that, oh, I might have to move to Ohio. So never thought about it.
Or an opportunity that you would love to do.
Exactly. Because I'm like, oh my goodness. And so there were many nights where I cried to my husband. I'm like, what are we going to do? Like, this is a great thing. And, for him, he's always been supportive in those moments. He's always been there. For us, it was a matter of like, we're going to work it out. We're going to figure it out. Like, if this is what we have to do, like, let's do it now. We don't have kids together. And so we're young. Let's go do the sacrifice now and we'll figure it out. And so literally I got the phone call about the offer during my wedding rehearsal because I had been interviewing with them. And it was, as you know, things takes a long time to get anything when you're trying to transition companies. And so I got the call right around my wedding rehearsal time, and literally they said, congratulations, here's a wedding gift. You got an offer to the role. And I'm like, oh, wow, like this is real. And so, we got married in July of 2021. He moved on to the West Coast to take on his role. I moved to Ohio to take on my role. And I think that even that is probably the biggest challenge that I have ever experienced in my life, because for him, he's always been there through the rest of my challenges physically.
Yes.
As now I'm like, okay, I'm navigating new waters. I don't have family in Ohio. Luckily, I've had friends who I went to grad school with. They also worked at said company.
Yes.
And so at least I had them, but I'm like, no, I don't have my person. Like, I'm moving to a neighborhood I don't know. I'm starting a new company. So even navigating that is very different in the sense of this is different from my former company. Like, it's a culture like here. Am I going to fit in? Like, am I going to do okay? This is a new hair care. I've never worked hair care. I've only worked skincare. So learning that. So, during this time, it was a matter of leaning on each other via phone calls. And of course, we have a 3-hour difference. So we're up late at night. We're trying to make sure we're checking in. Like, you're okay. You're going to do it. We're going to get there. This will be short. And so here we are almost, 2.5 years later. Still doing
this is a huge change. Like, this is like a culture change.
Yeah.
Like, you're getting married. You got married and lived on two different coasts, 2 different time zones, everything.
Yes, everything. And so
it worked.
It worked. Now, I will say in the beginning, it was like we were just coming out of quarantine. So of course, at that time, you're like, oh yes, like, I need a breather. Like, you go over there, I'll be here. Let's just take it down, take a breather. But then after 2 days, I'm like, okay, no, I need my person. I understand why I have a person. Like, I need my person.
Yes.
But no, we've both been very successful in our journeys, being apart, in the sense of he's been able to make waves in the West Coast doing what it is that he does. I've been able to make waves at the company that I am in, and waves in places where I didn't think I would exist. Like, I've been on a BT commercial. I've been able to do Essence Talks. I've been on, different sponsorship ads, different brands for Black women. I get to talk to Black women. I get to develop products for Black women. Like, I never in my life would have thought. And so what's funny is just last week, I was scrolling through my pictures, and I took a picture. One of my mentors, he's at my former company. He told me to write out what my perfect role would look like. And that was back in 2020 when we're in quarantine.
Okay.
And I just saw the picture again this past weekend, just scrolling through my pictures, and literally everything that I had written on that sheet exists in my life today.
I believe in writing it down.
Write it down, because, like I said, it's those moments of like, you've been through the challenges and you're like, oh my God, I'm never going to make it. It doesn't make sense. And now you look back and you laugh. You're like, whoa, like, this is here. Like, you're living
here. It will exist. It will exist if you want it to, but you do have to write it down.
You have to write it down. I wrote it down. I prayed every time. I am a God-fearing woman. I used to ask God, if this is not the space you want me to be in, please remove me. Let me know and re-guide me to the journey that you put me here on. Like let me know what my purpose is so that I can work towards that. And it's just scary to know, like, that he's listening, and I'm here to tell that story today.
No, that's a good story to tell. Like, I totally believe in that.
Yes.
That's the way that we exist. No, girl, I just love it. I love it because a lot of times, and that's why I even call myself like a reimagined strategist. And the first question that I ask all people is, what is it that you want? When you decide, like when you decide what you want looks like, because most of the time we allow other people to decide for us, or to come up with something for us.
That's real. That's real. There have been many times where people are like, oh, you're not going to do that. Like, or that's such a cliche box. Like, you need to look at other things. And for me, I've had a passion for this my whole life. I can look back and literally tell people when they say, oh, what did you want to be when you were younger? And what are you today? I wanted to be a beauty scientist, and I'm a beauty scientist. I'm in that space. Like, I would have never imagined in a million years I would be in this seat. And it's scary. It scares me in the sense of like, oh, I asked for this. Like, so now that I asked for it, I also better make sure I do what I need to do to keep it and to grow in it. I asked for it, and it's been presented to me. But again, I look at it as, by having passion for this space, having passion for beauty and STEM, although it's a cliche space, it's another space that hasn't really been tapped into by our communities. There's a lot of us out there that people don't know that we exist. And we don't, and it's sad because again, we have students coming up behind us who, again, they might be interested in these areas if they knew. They might seek going the STEM route if they knew that this is what it took to get there, or this role is even possible. And so it's amazing.
It is. And I think that you're amazing.
Thank
and
you.
I want as many people as we can tell and share how amazing STEM is, how amazing the opportunities are, how many opportunities there are, even when people think that they aren't. You know, like sometimes they think that they're highly coveted and they're exclusive. And that's not necessarily true.
Nope.
You know, sometimes you need to just open up and say, hey, this is something that I want to do. I desire it. And it'll open up for you.
It literally does. And I look at it as, you know, I'm in my passion when I know that even on the days where it gets hard, even on the days where I'm like over it and I'm like, I want to quit, it's still a good day for me because that means that there's more challenges that I have to solve. And I want to do that because I'm passionate about my consumer. I'm passionate about her because she still feels like we haven't done what we needed to do. And so to be a woman of color, a Black woman, a Black scientist in rooms where this wasn't a prominent thing, like you barely see her, I want to make sure that she is heard in that room because before then we weren't there. So now that we do have that platform, I want to solve for her. So even if I have a bad day today, I am still going to fight to make sure that she has what she needs.
Absolutely. Well, I am glad that you are in the room fighting. We need girls in the room fighting. As a matter of fact, I get excited because there's so many options. You know, it used to be a show. You know, like it used to be nothing. You know, I think about Madam CJ, you know, and she had stuff, you know, and it used to be a shelf, and then it was a end cap.
The end cap, that's it.
You know, and now it's like, oh, wait a minute, I got some options now.
It's options. It can be overwhelming, but we have options. So for me, it's making sure that she can navigate that space and find, or he or they can navigate that space.
Absolutely.
And know that they were thought of when these products were curated.
Yeah, no, that is beautiful. All right. So you have told us so much. I am like so thrilled. I feel like we can keep on talking. But I always ask, because I don't want you to leave the building, leave this lab without what it would be your biggest piece of advice that you would give anybody as it relates to change. Biggest piece of advice you've ever gotten, or that you would share with anybody.
Sure. So when I think about change, as somebody who has changed a lot, location, you know, who I am and so forth, don't be afraid of it. And don't be afraid of it in the sense of you need to get uncomfortable to grow. If you're too comfortable, you'll never see what else is out there for you. You'll never be able to level up because you're just sitting in that, like, this feels easy to me. I'm just going to keep it going. There's so much opportunity out there that you'd be surprised you have the skill sets for. Aside from that is having a community, having people to lean on. You know, I've moved a lot of places where I didn't know anybody. And now I have family wherever I go, because again, I couldn't do this alone. I had my partner with me. I had people that I met in peer mentorship. I have mentors and sponsors. Without them, I would not be where I am today, because if it were up to me, I could have said, you know what, I'm just going to listen to that teacher and say, I'm done. Like, I'm tired. She wins. She wins. I couldn't be the scientist that I wanted to be because, again, she told me back in high school. So having that community, that soundboard to make sure that, no, you're doing what you need to do. Or if I'm off track, they're bringing me right back on track to go ahead and finish the mission. And so just don't be afraid of that change. Get uncomfortable, because that's where you're going to learn the most. But then also make sure to have your tribe with you, so that you can grow and you have community to lean on.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Dr. Ashley, it has been my pleasure.
Yes. Thank you so much for having. This was amazing. I love this.
I love it. Listen, I'm going to bring you back. We're going to bring your husband.
Yes.
It's going to be good. It's going to be good. Thank you so much for joining in. And anytime you want to stop at a lab, you just let me know.
Oh, I will. You know, the lab is my place, so I will willingly stop in anytime you invite me.
Well, this has been, you guys. If you listen, I know that you guys are going to share this with all of y'all's friends. So make sure that you do. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Tune in every Friday. We drop a new episode. This has been the Reimagine You Lab podcast. I am MG, the Reimagined Strategist, and I've been here today with Dr. Ashley, who is the scientist. This is an amazing young Black woman who is part of the new era of products that are on the shelves. You can go and you can find her. We've got all her details and deeds right below. So make sure that you capture all of this. Dr. Ashley, you want to say anything before we say goodbye?
No, stay on the journey. You guys got it. You need something, feel free to reach out.
All right. Be blessed. We'll see y'all here next week.